I'd like to welcome you back. So we have with us today Dr. Chanie Messinger, who has an enormous resume. I'm going to see if I can try to knock this out. I might be missing something, but she is a speaker, author, a coach of all types, educational consultant, an occupational therapist, a professor, and a researcher. Hi, Dr. Chanie, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you, Ari, for having me on your show. I'm just feeling incredibly humbled and grateful. So thank you. And then thank you, fellow audience, for being here and listening as well. So thank everyone.
Thank you. So before we continue, do I call you Chanie, Dr. Messinger, Dr. Chanie? What do you want to be?
Whatever resonates for you, it doesn't matter.
What do your friends call you?
My friends call me Chanie.
Okay, so I'll try to be your friend. So the reason I came across you, as I think I told you, was because you do a lot of these mindful thoughts by the ocean, and they really resonated with me, and I really enjoyed them. And I think from the feedback I see you get on them, a lot of people enjoy them. And so I figured, as a person who has all this mindfulness and you're single, so we get an opportunity to get a perspective of the singles world, any topic that you want to pick from probably an extremely interesting perspective.
Definitely. I think when it comes to mindfulness, and especially during COVID, having about almost 10 years of experience working as a therapist, and over the past, really, I would say 6 years, learning and incorporating a lot of mindfulness and meditation, especially during COVID, being physically alone, yet noting that I'm always surrounded with people, even if they're physically not with me, yet I have the ability to cultivate just being by hopping on phone call with friends or with family, to cultivate that being, while at the same time, allowing myself to just be with the as-isness of what's manifesting and what's coming up. And I find that over the past bit of time, as really the world has opened up at this point, more of this opportunity for interaction and meeting other people from all walks of life, and having opportunity to travel and to speak and teach on mindfulness meditation has really been spectacular.
That's wonderful. So you actually took something good out of COVID, which is great, because a lot of people like to complain about this and that, but you saw it as an opportunity to grow within things that you were mindful of to begin with.
100%. I felt like a lot of the time during COVID, I was physically alone, yet I had social media, Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And it's why not, as best as I can, share my experiences of what I'm, going through, while having this mindfulness approach to it, while hopping on a Facebook Live when I'm at the ocean, or hopping on a Facebook Live when I'm at the Eiffel Tower, so that other people can learn and see how even through loudness and chaos and through times of a lot of stress and hecticness, we have the ability to cultivate these mindful moments, to cultivate that stillness and that pause, even when so many things are happening around us.
Right. So basically, alone versus lonely. So you're giving off this impression, to be quite honest, that even though you are alone, you could feel the energy, that it doesn't feel like you're alone. So it's interesting that you're actually reflecting on that from the other side of it, when that's the vision you give off. You truly do.
Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a music festival, and I was kind of semi-part of a panel discussion with social work and psychologists. And one of the group participants mentioned that he's single, and he was in, I think, his early 40s. And he's he really, really struggles being alone, and he feels very, very lonely. And I think that oftentimes there might be this idea of, if I'm alone, it's automatically something negative. It's automatically something that needs to be fixed or corrected. I need to have a significant other. I need to be with a friend. I need to be with a family, because ultimately I don't want to have this feeling of aloneness or this loneliness feeling. And ultimately, it's through alone that we have the opportunity to cultivate this like space and this abundance and getting to know ourselves from the inside out. And it can be easy, yeah, for that person or the people that are single, whether you're in your 20s or 30s or 50s, or whether you're a widow or not, no matter what stage we are in our life. I think that it's important to have that aloneness and to realize that we don't necessarily need to have that charge of that loneliness just because society says that you need to have a significant other, you need to be with friends or family or do X, Y, and Z, just because we have the, sorry, I think we might need to edit that. My alarm went off. We have the ability to debunk that and to realize that when I'm alone, there's that beauty that surrounds of just coming home to oneself, connecting to oneself through meditation, through breathing, through exercise, whatever it may be. And it's nice to have activities, and it's not to say that, don't be around friends, your families, or don't date, or don't do things that bring us joy, socially and being out and about 110%. But through that space of that aloneness, especially for people that might be single and living on their own, or people just single in general, through that aloneness, there's so much learning and growing. So when that person does show up, when it's a significant other potentially, or new friends or new acquaintances, I'm all set and ready to go because I'm so, for the most part, okay with being alone. So that significant other is ultimately going to be not that puzzle piece, or not that someone's going to make me whole. That person is ultimately almost going to be this like cherry on top and complement me where I'm at, because I've transformed and I learned and grown as much as I could to this point, and that other individual is going to further help me with that transformational journey, not out of this place of like dependentness, not out of this place of like fixing or changing or morphing, out of a place of this is where I'm at, this is where you're at, and how can our relationship together, how can we learn and grow and transform together, kids, no kids, traveling, not traveling, whatever that dynamic, wherever the people may be, but utilizing the opportunities and the experiences that does show up for that couple, for that relationship, that cherry on top, and not coming out of this place of like lack and this aloneness and this pity and this victim, because ultimately that's going to be the type of person that we're going to attract. So when I'm able to cultivate that okayness of like being alone, I'm okay, I got this. I know that universally, like I'm always interconnected. I can tap into my breath. Yeah, I can call friends and family and I can have conversations, but I'm working on cultivating just being and getting to know who I am, so that when that significant other, when those people or acquaintances or other relationships shows up, I am like all set and ready to go, because I'm in this place of abundance and love and light and joy. And it's that cherry on top piece that will complement me and further help me transform in my life.
That is wonderful, and you can't possibly disagree. But I do have a question. First of all, do you think it might be more difficult for men? Second of all, do you think it might be more difficult for a person that doesn't have the background or the emotional support that others might have? And thirdly, and most importantly, how does somebody get to this point if they do have limitations?
Okay. So the first question is related to men. I personally wouldn't necessarily know, as I am a female, so I can't really quite answer that. But if I were to like infer and kind of guess, I think both men and women have the ability to be able to do so. And I don't think it makes it any different if you're a single guy versus if you're a single girl. That's my perception. Even though, yes, females and males are different and we each have our own uniqueness surrounding things, but I can't really directly answer that because I don't know, because I am not a male.
Well, the reason, fair enough, the reason I said that is because, it's like a known thing that women are more of the anchor. So it's like they already have the home in them, so to speak. And also there are things that are off limits for a man that I don't think are ever off limits for a woman. For example, if a guy is single or divorced, so then he can't exactly put a kid on his lap or play with children until he goes back into that family setting. Whereas nobody really feels uncomfortable if they have a guest over and, they have their baby on their lap. So there's a certain amount of love and warmth and things that I think guys might miss out on.
I think there's the conditioning, and that goes back to society. As like a female, they do have a tendency maybe to be more of that anchor when it comes to the home. And females do have a tendency to be a little bit more empathetic and more kind and more compassionate, just like generally speaking. I don't want to stereotype, but yeah, for the most part, I think a lot of people would feel that way as well. But I think that there's this belief surrounding that if a woman's going to someone's home and there's other kiddos there, why can't that male have the little kid sit on their lap? Like, says who? Who's the one that says that the male can't give that TLC to that little kid, whether it's family or not? You know, they're in an open environment, they're with other people, and it's so too with the female. I don't think there's that much of a difference surrounding that. And I think it's for, if a male is having that belief of like, I really, you know, want to be surrounding with kids, and then there might be that society or connotation surrounding
Stigma,
that.
right.
Yeah. So I wonder, deconstructing that belief of where is it coming from, and how can I, if I'm interested in being around kids, how can I potentially like cultivate that and do that? Maybe it's through work, maybe it's through a family friend, maybe it's through a friend and having like a play date with like the partners and the little kiddo, or just having a play date with the other kiddo, like depending on what that might be and that need. But I think it's deconstructing that belief that females, yeah, tend to be more nurturing, but there are a lot of like stay-at-home other like dads. There are a lot of stay-at-home moms too, but like there could be that shift just surrounding that as well, that it doesn't necessarily have to be just because you're male you're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and just because you're female you're gonna do A, B, and C. We have the ability to like discern and see like, why is that, where is that coming from? And I can kind of like deconstruct that space a little bit and then discern and see what's resonating surrounding the after effects.
So you're saying that don't be a victim to your society. If you want to have certain relationships that might have a stigma in your society, donate your time, go to the local boys club, or change your situation so that you're not a victim to it, but you're proactive in a way that will bring you more joy in life. That's a very valid point. Good answer.
Thank you.
I still have two more for you though.
Yes.
So the other one, yes, go ahead.
Remind me, the other one was
about what if somebody doesn't have the proper emotional support or background, and how to deal with it.
Yeah. So I would say during COVID, so I am a therapist. I am an occupational therapist, and a lot of my training, there was a little bit of training surrounding mental health, but not a lot. So I just tend to be like very proactive. I'm very interested in psychology of like emotions and interaction and of people, and especially have a very strong interest in mindfulness meditation. My doctoral thesis was surrounding that. A lot of the work when I'm working with parents and kids ages like 0 to 11, 12 years old is a lot surrounding that, really intentionally towards the parent. So for people that may not have like the skills or the resource to be able to do so, I would say reaching out to a therapist, someone like me, or a coach or a mentor, and like learning how to cultivate that practice, because it's something that I've cultivated really. I've been in the meditation space for about 6 years, but I really started to cultivate this practice since I'm about like 18 years old. So it's over a decade at this point of cultivating. And if you are interested in trying to shift emotional or psychological, social trickiness or challenges that are coming up, I would say really reaching out to a therapist or a coach to start that process a little bit, because we all have the ability to be able to learn how to be present. We all have the ability to learn how to cultivate the emotional, the self-regulation, the self-help skills, so that we can be of support to ourselves as best as we can, while at the same time having a strong social group, having a strong group of coaches and therapists as needed, depending on that person.
That's so interesting, because it's like the other side of the coin of something that I always say. Not always, I don't walk around saying it all the time, but it's my belief that a therapist is a paid friend, meaning if somebody has really good friends and really good perspective, they could probably make it through. My argument being that every therapist has their own approach. So if it was scientific, like if it was math, exact, every single therapist would say the exact same thing. Now, your solution to this dilemma that I brought up is, if I'm understanding this right, is if you don't have the right friends, then that's the time when you pay for that right friend. Kind of. Yes
and no. Certain things like friendships, I think, are there out of this place of love and kindness and support. It's someone that I can go to and I can have conversations with. They can help me problem solve. They can offer me advice. They can offer me like that TLC to the degree. However, I think there's that fine line of if a person is experiencing psychological needs and they're needy, they're dependent, they're really struggling to function in their everyday life, that's that fine line of it's very likely that that person may need to seek professional help. Because yes, friendships are there and they can help and they can guide, yet at the same time, there's that fine line. If a person is struggling with their day-to-day functioning, they're having challenges, that's where that point of like that boundary of it's important for that friend or that person to be working with a professional. And yes, a therapist could quote unquote be maybe perceived as like a paid friend to a certain degree. At the same time, though, there's like a lot of different skills and there's a lot of things that are worked on because the therapist is not directly in the person's life. So they don't really have that much bias in comparison to a friend because a friend knows the relationship between you and your partner, your relationship with other family members, your relationships with your work and your job and the school and whatever the relationships may be. With the therapist, they have an idea, but they kind of have like this mountain view perspective on what, is happening with the client versus if like
which could be a good thing. The limited knowledge could be a good thing.
Exactly. Because then with the friendship, they're actually in the mountain with the friend. They're going to side with the girl. They're going to side with the guy. They're going to side with this teacher or not this teacher because they're in it. The therapist is almost to the degree of like this neutrality piece, and they're able to see things and offer like the person to have that space, to have that perspective and discern, what to do or what not to do and how to proceed with the given circumstance or situation with it. So I think it goes back to with in terms of like emotional support or how to cultivate this self-help perspective. Sometimes, yes, friends are beneficial and they can help to the degree, but if there's that point and that place where the person is really struggling, that's where reaching out to a coach or to a therapist or finding like a really good mentor to, problem solve, figure out things together with.
Right. To be fair, as you were answering, I realized that what I said was very vague, meaning let's take some extreme examples. If somebody's having a hard time feeling down about a problem, then they can go to a friend. If somebody is feeling suicidal or dealing with a major drug issue, yeah, that's not something they should be going to a friend. So I need to clarify that off the bat that I was incorrect in not being clear, and you did clarify that. Besides for the other point that you made, which is also true about the unbiasedness and the professionalism of it. Thank you.
Welcome.
I really, really appreciate having you on here. To be honest, I feel like there is so much for you to learn from you, for you to teach, and God willing, maybe in the future we'll have you again. But at the lack of just running too long, because there's really no other excuse. I would love to talk for another half hour, but it's a YouTube channel, and I think that I really, really do appreciate having you on here. And if anybody happens to be interested in Chanie, so there's directions in the description below on how to get a hold of her through me if there is a mutual interest. And again, thank you so much for coming on. I know you're super busy saving the world.
I'm incredibly humbled and grateful, and thank you for the conversation today, and really thank you for all that you do. We need more people sparking conversations related to things that are happening within the community, outside the community, and it's so important to have conversations surrounding that. So thank you for you being one of the spokespeople to facilitate that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny you say that because this is a conversation I have off camera, but for those who are curious, it's like, in our community, in the Jewish community, not that necessarily this is limited to the Jewish community, but since you and I are both Jewish, we both know there is Hatzalah, which is like a volunteer ambulance. There is Shomrim, which is volunteer liaison to the police. There's even Chaver, which is, volunteer helping people who get stuck. Their car has a flat tire and they don't know what to do. But what we don't have is this situation where the community needs to be more involved in the singles world from a perspective where like you either have like the interesting weekends, shall we call it, or you have these like events which attract a crowd that the regular people wouldn't want to go. In other words, there's two extremes. The average person wouldn't want to go to one type of event because they feel the people are too wild, and they don't want to go to the other type of event because the people are too, let's call them, awkward. And I mean, like, as I've said many times, I'm a firm believer that it all happens at the Shabbos table. I believe that the guy who created the anonymous meeting was at somebody's Sabbath table and said, wow, this is great. Everybody expresses himself and there's love and there's no judgment. I'm going to create something based on that. And then we have kids from the community that run into trouble, and then they end up going to anonymous meetings to straighten themselves out, which is great, whatever, full circle, however people resolve. But back to the point you were making is that, yeah, it's important. Like, I feel that, you know, the matchmaking processes and all this kind of stuff, that's wonderful. But sometimes, you know, it's like, the way I look at it is, if somebody says to you, would you go out with somebody that's this and this in age? Well, no way, right? But you walk down the street and you see an attractive woman and you're like, you know, I would, but you don't know that she has 3 kids and she has a financial situation and she's older than you. But this idea of interviewing people on YouTube without knowing too much, they just share what they choose to share. And I'm not interviewing you, you know, I'm not interviewing the person. I'm just having a conversation with you, which is the way it should be. People should get to know what other people are like before they get to hear, oh, this person's exactly 47. This person is exactly 5'2", or all the nonsense. Find out if the person's interesting, then let me know, and then we move forward. So that's my thought process, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing it. And it definitely can resonate, the extremeness of like the different places and spaces, especially for singles. There's really limited to no opportunity. And I think as a community, it's important to consider that and to cultivate that space for people that are single at different ages, different stages, so that there is more of that community that is surrounding that. Not to say that they should be setting up or doing this or that, but really just cultivating a little bit more of this community. Because I think a lot of singles do feel that way. It's like, where do I go, you know, for Shabbosim, or where am I going for certain holidays, or where am I going just in general, when other people are perceived as having these places or having these spaces. And for the singles, especially in the community, there really isn't that much of an option. There is outside the community, and there's hobbies and other things 110%. But I think within the community as a whole, I think that there's opportunity for room for improvement with that.
Yes. I was divorced for 11 years, so I was in there, and I'm aware, and I agree with you. Never take away, but add on. And you know, no matter how religious you are, always keep your Sabbath table open and warm, welcoming, you know, and just unassuming. You could be as religious as you want, and any religion can understand this. Do that on your own time. But when it comes to letting people talk to each other, don't be so religious about a guy and a girl at your table having a conversation, or, you know, setting up a scenario where, you know, people don't even know. You don't even take the credit. You have a couple of girls and a couple of guys knowing good and well that there's one in each one that you have a feeling might hit it off. You don't always need to take credit. You just need to accomplish in life. But yeah, thank you for your compliments, and thanks again for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, God bless.
You too. Thank you.